Good. That's the best kind of Darren.
Silent Darren.
Okay, let's just make sure that everything sounds okay. I'll pull up in the chat. Yeah, we're still getting some breathing on your end, Jeremy. Not a lot, but just a little bit.
Move my mic again.
There. Oh, man. Yeah, some mics are just really sensitive to that. It's just the way it is. It should be fine. Oh, it looks good. We're all up there. Okay. Just let some people come on in. Oh, Francois, are you guys all muted?
No, I muted myself to cough. So
I was like, it's silent. I feel like I'm alone.
See, I have good Zoom etiquette. Like I mute when I'm about to make strange noises.
when you can, yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming the audio is fine. Let's check if the chat. Guys, can you guys hear us? Is the audio great? Sound is good. CF Farsight. Awesome. Or I guess it's just C Farsight. But welcome. So good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for warmer 40K from the Great White North. Today's show is episode 193, and we're going to talk all about the Unforgiven, the Fallen, the Dark Angels. This show is kind of much anticipated. A lot of people are very interested in these, dark-robed, mysterious Space Marines. And I think with the recent announcements of all the supplements coming up, and the Dark Angels weren't listed as being an immediate supplement, so we thought it'd be good to cover them because you're probably going to have to play against them. So as usual, I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammer Chris on Twitter and Instagram. And I am joined by the French Space Marine.
Fanboy? Aficionado? Expert?
Fanboy. I didn't want to put those words in your mouth. You're something, yeah.
How's it going, everyone?
So Francois, and then we have, of Dark Angels fame, at least in Ottawa, joining us live, we have...
Yeah, this is Jeremy. It's good to be here, and hopefully you all will have me back after tonight.
Well, no, you sound great. It's just Jeremy doesn't have his camera, so vast majority of the people are listening. So those of you that are watching, you don't get you have to look at my ugly face and Francois, and you're kind of going to see a nice Dark Angel pick for Jeremy. But it is what it is. We'll figure that out in the future. Oh, and CFR Sight's already throwing the jokes in there. They're coming in the Chaos Codex. He's saying, yeah. That might be what's happening there. Is they might be coming in the Chaos one. Okay, so I guess we'll just start. I just want to kind of talk about something quick that came out. Is the new Forge World book went up for pre-order. So you guys stoked for that?
That's exciting. Super stoked
to it.
So a lot of things were missing though, right? They released the table of contents, and quite a few of the relic tanks are no longer listed as relic. They're just listed as regular. Do you think that's going to change, or maybe the relic could be an upgrade? Who knows, right?
Or it could just have moved to a keyword on the datasheet. I don't think we'll know for sure until we see the book. It could mean that they decided to let go of the relic rule, which frankly seems like it's from a bygone era and doesn't really mesh well with the detachment rules in current 40K. So maybe that's just gone, and I would welcome that change. But it's possible they also just invented a relic keyword they're going to stick on all the datasheets, right? So can't really say one way or the other.
Well, if they're not a relic, then they don't hit on 2s. They'll hit on 3s, correct?
Depends again, because you have like venerable dreadnoughts in the regular Space Marine Codex that hit on 2s. So I don't know.
So I guess before we go on, what's the? We'll start with Jeremy here. What's the unit you're looking for in the Forge World book?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm hoping that Whirlwind Scorpiuses get nerfed to the ground along with Landspeeder Tempests. And I caught Francois drinking right there, so I think that was well earned. But the one that I'm probably looking for the most is the Contemptor, because right now the Relic Contemptor has a really fun mixed loadout that you can take, where you can mix your melee and shooting weapons, and it's a really effective platform. So kind of watching that one with a bit of bated breath to see what we are able to do with it still.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Francois, what are you waiting for or excited about? Or
Yeah, I think in the Space Marine Codex, in the Space Marine section, rather, like Jeremy, I'm really interested by the Dreadnoughts, both the Contemptor and the Leviathan. But just for the sake of the game in general, I'm really curious to see what they do with like the Xenos part of Forge World, because there's just so many Space Marine data sheets in the Forge World book, and frankly, there's a lot of Xenos parts of the Forge World range that need help. Like the rules were not very good, and I'm hoping that they become good or better than they were anyway.
Oh, thanks, Mark. Mark's talking shit in the chat. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to basically the elimination of a lot of, I guess, legacy things in there. Like, I know that it might have pissed a lot of people off with the whole craft, like the old Eldar losing a lot of the Corsair things, or it appears as if they've lost a lot of the Corsair things. But I'm kind of glad to see that. It'll clean it up a lot, as long as you didn't lose the rules for your model. You know, or you could maybe count them as something else if you did. But there wasn't a lot of purchasable Corsair stuff anyway. But
they got rid of a lot of stuff that they simply haven't made for a long time, and that just makes sense.
Yeah, and it kind of gives that clarity to finish off everything, which is very nice. Okay, so we're going to go straight into the sponsors to pay the bills here. So we have Dylan and Dan at Red Dragon in Orleans. We have Hoyt at Thunder Gifts and Games. We have Dave at Tista Miniatures, and we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for making the show possible. If you're interested in that, you can just go to patreon.com/CanHammer. So we're going to get right into the main topic, because I think we're actually going to talk for quite a bit about a few things. So I wanted to rush right into there. But before we do, you know, most of you, well, you can't see him, but you basically might be like, who's this Jeremy guy that's joined them? So I want to just take a minute to kind of go over some of his accolades and introduce him. So welcome, Jeremy. How did you get into the 40K hobby?
I actually started back in, I want to say 2002 or 2003 with my younger brother and one of our friends. I actually don't remember how we got into the hobby. But I do remember seeing these really cool, I mean, I played Space Marines back then. We all three of us actually played different flavors of Space Marines. My brother played Ultramarines, I played Dark Angels, and I think our buddy played Iron Hands or Raven Guard. I can't remember. His armies were always black.
So Black Templars, probably, if it was back then, right? That was when they were, or no?
We weren't really meta, or we didn't know what we were doing most of the time. So those models ended up in a shoebox for a good almost 15 years until almost 3 years ago now. And I was moving house and I found them and was wondering where things were at. And it turns out that was shortly after the 8th edition Dark Angels Codex had come out. There was a lot of interesting things happening. So I kind of jumped right back into the hobby full swing. And then over the last year and a half or so, I've started going to tournaments, both the local RTTs that have been hosted by Red Dragon, as well as last year I went to both CanHammer Team Tournament, Capital City Bloodbath, and what was the last one? I can't remember.
Was it Warzone Montreal? No, were you there?
No, I didn't make it out to Warzone. It was TGX out in Toronto.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think I remember seeing you there. So you've only been playing, I guess, 3 years, essentially, besides when you were a small child.
Yeah, I've only really been playing for the last 3 years.
That sounds weird. I thought, because like obviously we all play in Ottawa. I thought I remembered you being around a lot longer than that. So.
No, I mean, I've only actually been living in Ottawa for the last 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I was living, when I got back into the hobby, I was living in the GTA.
Okay, so Toronto guy. Is that where you got into it originally, or?
Nope, I'm from Ottawa originally. I moved out there for work back in I think 2012 or 2013.
So you've only essentially played Dark Angels, or for the most part. We know that you have different armies. So so you played the Dark Angels, obviously, when you first got in. You played them when you got back into 8th edition. What other armies tickle your fancy these days?
Well, I have a full AdMech army, and some people who listen have been subjected to it, which is always fun. Francois being one of them. And then I own, back when I got back into playing competitively, I decided that I wanted to try out a more meta army. So I picked up an Imperial soup list of triple knights and AdMech, and splashed in some guard for flavor. So I have all of that. They're more sitting on a shelf now, obviously, with 9th detachments being the way that they are. You don't see those kind of armies coming out anymore. But right now, my two main armies that I bounce back and forth between are AdMech and Dark Angels.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think I played all three of those armies of yours, maybe. Yeah. Dark Angels, AdMech, and Knights. So that's great. So the last question I have for you to kind of, then we can take the spotlight off of you, is so there's three aspects of the hobby. There's the fluff, there's the gaming, there's the painting. Which aspect or multiple, like where do you fit in?
I really enjoy the gaming aspect of it. The hobbying side is nice. It's something that I will use to kind of in my quiet hours in the towards the end of the evening. But more than anything, I love playing games with people. I love being able, and of course, in today's day and age, it's a little more difficult to do. But I love the opportunity to get together, throw dice, chat, laugh over horrible rolls, and just the playing of the game is where I really draw the most from the hobby as a whole.
Yeah, and I guess I would say since you've only been really playing 2 years, I'd say you're like you've done well in the last couple of years, right? Because you've been tearing up our local meta, so that's pretty cool. That's surprising, but yeah, you've been doing really well. But you've been playing a lot of TTS as well, correct?
Yes. So I help run 2 leagues on Tabletop Simulator. So that's basically been where I've been getting a lot of my play experience since we went into lockdown back in March.
Okay, so you like, is it like Ottawa people, or is they international, or how do those leagues
both
work?
of them are international. So one of them is about 150 people, and the other one's about 50 people, and it's just basically opportunity for people to play regular games against each other.
That's great. Yeah, I've been getting into TTS lately, and actually Francois and I are supposed to play tomorrow night, so we'll see how that goes. But I'm 0-2 for TTS right now, so
we'll clumsily get through one turn and then call it the night.
No, the worst thing is, so TTS, for people that don't know, is Tabletop Simulator, and it's an online board game kind of tabletop simulator, for lack of a better term. And there's a lot of mods. You can play 40K. So if you're interested in that, it's like $22 Canadian, and you can go on and play. It's not perfect, but it gets the itch scratched, I guess you could say. Great. Okay, so now we're going to move into the Dark Angels. So I also play Dark Angels. Jeremy plays Dark Angels. Francois plays Space Marines, and one Marine is like the other.
Dark Angels were my first army in like 1992 or something. Second edition, I think it was.
That's funny. They were my third army. So when I was in high school, I actually was playing Steel Legion, third edition, and I had a mechanized infantry. I played a guy at the store, and he showed up with 30 Terminators, threw him down. I was like, how the hell did you do that? And he goes... I'm like, you have no troops. He goes, nope, Terminators are troops in the Deathwing, but you can only take Terminators, Dreadnoughts, and Land Raiders. And I was, my eyes went wide like an owl, and I was like, geez, okay, I want to play these. And actually, when I got back into 40K after college, that was the army that I started, was Deathwing. So I'm not even a Dark Angel player. I've only played Deathwing. I've never actually played a green power, well, besides Asriel, a green power armored model. So it's going to be kind of interesting. Yeah, they're just so crazy. Like the fact that you could have the first company of all Terminators is just, I thought it was wild at the time. Now it's not so great, but, or is it? So the first thing that I want to talk about is how the supplements work. For those of you that maybe are new to 40K or not super familiar, is basically the main Space Marine Codex came out. Dark Angels used to have their own standalone codex, but they have since kind of eliminated that, and they basically produced a PDF online that gives you all of the Dark Angels only units within it, and then also some kind of fluff rules. And it says at the beginning of the Index of Starry's Dark Angels, they call it, but it says at the beginning that this is only a temporary measure and that full rules will be coming out. But because if you're on the internet these days, you will have heard a lot of rage about how broken the Dark Angels allegedly are. So I thought it'd be good to cover them because they're going to be popping up a lot lately. So I want to start off. I'll go with you, Jeremy. What makes the Dark Angels special? What's their chapter tactic?
Okay, so the Dark Angels chapter tactic is really quite straightforward. If you don't move in the turn that you're currently in, aside from consolidates and pile-ins, you get +1 to hit.
Now
that works in both melee as well as shooting.
So now the other thing is that if you pile in or things of that nature, they actually don't count. It's only if you actually move or charge.
Yeah, or heroically intervene. Or
heroic intervene doesn't count as well. So that's pretty crazy. Now, obviously, the Marine Codex came out with a plethora of chapter tactics. Why is this one? Is this one a good one? Is it worth it? Or what's your take on that?
It's a pretty decent one. Now, that's actually only one half of it. The other half of it, which doesn't come up very often, but it is pretty fun, is that you automatically pass attrition tests.
Mm-hmm.
So if you fail morale and you've got 2 guys left in the squad, well, you only lose 1 guy. And so that second model remains and can be really difficult to remove a large unit. If you have a 10-man unit, you aren't worried about morale towards the end of it, especially now that Marines have lost the ability to re-roll morale.
Yeah, correct. The only thing is that one thing, which spoiler, but we won't get there, is a lot of the units you want to take big units of are fearless anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I want to go over to Francois now. What's your take on the chapter tactic?
So I think it's actually quite powerful for certain builds, because I'm seeing in this codex, Dark Angel have always been a bit of a split personality kind of army, because they had 3 distinct identities. You had the Ravenwing, the Deathwing, and then the so-called Green Wing for the regular green power armored people. And these subsections of the army played quite differently. But one thing that they kind of have in common, or the Ravenwing and the Deathwing anyway, is that they hit really hard in combat. And at first you look at this chapter tactic and you don't think it does anything for combat. Like, it's not like the Whitecars chapter tactic, right? It doesn't increase your damage in combat. But if you get charged, you have not moved that player turn. And so you get that +1 to hit in combat.
Yeah, so it is interesting. It makes it more of a reactive army, which is a little bit going in the fluff somewhat. And they used to have a rule intractable, which is very similar to this new one. So it's kind of a modern take on the old rules, which is pretty cool. So the first thing I want to start with before we kind of get into some of the more details is the faction special rules. Now, there's quite a few big differences, and these are important, I guess, to get covered now because they kind of lead into the rest of the book. So we'll start with the Inner Circle. So what does Inner Circle do, Jeremy?
So Inner Circle is, so we often joke about Marines having rules upon rules upon rules.
Well, they do.
Inner Circle is one of these cases where this is a 4 or 5 part rule where basically there's a series of conditions that you have to, that you can go through. So, but the gist of it is, the first part is you're immune to morale. You automatically pass morale tests, which is great. You don't have to worry about anything like that. The second part, which never comes into play whatsoever, is if you're within engagement range of a fallen unit, you can't fall back unless you have the vehicle keyword.
Which should never happen. Let's be honest.
Because the fallen, no one plays fallen.
Yeah, that's what, and if somebody did, well, they'd have maybe 1 squad or something like that, but yeah.
Yeah. So then the third part, which can actually come into play, is that if you do decide to fall back with a unit that has the Inner Circle keyword, unless it's a vehicle, Ravenwing, or Chapter Master keyword, you have to do a leadership test where you roll 2d6, and if you're equal or under it, you can then fall back. If you don't, you have to stay where you're at. So it kind of makes you a little bit, I want to fall back, I want to get out of this combat because it's a little awkward. Well, no, you can't if you fail the roll. And then the last part, which is where everyone is kind of going crazy about, is they have Inner Circle infantry units effectively have permanent transhuman physiology. They cannot be wounded on a unmodified wound roll of 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, it's almost like they're looking at their inner transhuman. No, that's interesting. Now, the one that the fallback, you can't fall back. A lot of the Inner Circle units are so killy, in my opinion, anyway, that I think a lot of the times that's not going to be such a huge downside. But having all of your Inner Circle units essentially transhumaned, I think, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and the thing is that the biggest complement of Inner Circle infantry are Deathwing Terminators.
Yeah, and sadly, the bikes, the Ravenwing bikes, are also Inner Circle, but they don't get the transhuman because they're not infantry, which is
I get something
Unfortunate.
almost as good.
Almost as good. So then take it away. You want to talk about Jink, Francois?
Yeah, I love that rule. This is a very fluffy rule that I really wish Whitecars had
I was
because
gonna. I
bikers
knew
are
you'd say
awesome.
that. Yeah, I knew you'd say that.
But Jink is great because it basically gives you, if you're a biker from the Ravenwing, it gives you a 5-up invulnerable save against ranged attack if you've moved. So you can't stay stationary. You have to move. But if you advance, then that becomes a 4-up invulnerable save. So those biker units become very hard to shift.
Yeah, toughness 5.
Because they're also like
wounds.
3 wounds, toughness 5, 4-up invuln if you've advanced them. You're going to advance a lot with those units. So, I mean, it's a very resilient army overall.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely like their army-wide special rules. So before we move on then, so obviously these are the rules why you would take a Dark Angel army. And where do you guys see these fitting in with the other Space Marine kind of chapters? Do you think this is one of the better ones after just on looking at the rules in isolation? Go start with you, Jeremy.
I'm biased, but I would actually put these in like A tier when it comes to Space Marine rules, because we talked about having permanent transhuman on, you become extremely tanky. Jink, one of the other things that Francois didn't mention is that it basically requires you to, only if you remain stationary in your movement phase do you lose that basic 5-up invulnerable save against shooting. So it means that even turn 1, if you're going second, all of your Jink units have that 5-up invulnerable save against shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an interesting, that's a very nice kind of nuance to that rule. It shows that they actually thought about it, which I really like. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is successor chapters. Is there anything different when you take successor units, Jeremy, or is it basically straightforward? Are they the same as these, or?
It's fairly straightforward. The one restriction is that the Inner Circle and Jink require you to have the Grim Resolve chapter tactic or to be using Inheritors of the Primarch, which means that you then take on the Dark Angels tactics. If you're running a successor chapter and say you're running Astral Claws or something similar, you have to take the Dark Angel specific one in order to benefit from Inner Circle or Jink. So if you're running them as say one of the custom chapter tactics, then you don't get these benefits. And that's very clearly a balanced decision.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone will run them as anything other than the original chapter, because losing access to those specific rules and the special characters, which we're not there yet, but they're also pretty damn good, is
Agreed.
just too much of a downside.
Yeah, so you'd almost, for those fluff bunnies out there, you'd have to kind of just take it up, and I'm playing Dark Angels and leave it at that.
Plus, they're reforming their Legion on the Rock anyway, right? So it's fluffy.
Well, that's if the line comes back, but we don't know. That's might be why they're delayed. So the next thing that I thought was really cool is we talked a few shows ago about soup and the downsides to taking soup armies, and they added this rule, Relentless Hunt, which basically allows if you have a pure Dark Angel army, like no soup of any kind, then while you're in the Devastator Doctrine, which is turn 1, and I don't believe it applies if you change the doctrine with one of the items there, but you basically add 6 inches to your range of heavy and rapid fire weapons, and if it's pistol and assault weapons, you add 3 inches. So that's pretty good. It gives you a little bit more reach turn 1, and kind of allows the Dark Angels, historic Dark Angel armies, as like mass troops, mass devastators, at least back in the older editions, and this kind of gives them that bonus where you can now sit your Dark Angels on the line if you want to be really risky and maybe lose the game if you go second, but you can sit them on the line and essentially not move and shoot turn 1 and reach people.
I think that actually is not nearly as big of a loss as some of the other so-called super doctrines, because the way that I'm reading the rule as written here, it won't activate if you put a unit into Dev Doctrine with a Warlord trait or a strat or whatever, because it says when the doctrine is active, and then it talks about units plural. I guess we could maybe argue it one way or the other, but if that's how it works, losing that isn't a big deal, because the Dev Doctrine is active only turn 1, and on a good table, you're probably not getting that many shots at the enemy on turn 1. So you could totally soup.
Yeah, and the one thing that I was thinking with that too is if you're going for it, you are kind of gambling a little bit on the the roll to go first. So I do like it though. It's nice. Like you could theoretically take a nice unit of Devastators, sit them way back, and now you have a lot longer reach. So your heavy bolters are now sitting in the 42-inch range of reach. So they could be back in a nice ruin and cover and kind of blow something off. Because I have played a couple games recently where you can't hide your whole army. You have to leave something out. Especially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to kind of comment in terms of service. That's one of the things that's been considered a few times before. In 8th edition, there were some people who were running Dark Angel soupless with guard to feed what it was effectively a hit and run smash captain. That was a Talon Master on bite, which was a speeder character. So it's not something that we really feel that we're missing. There was a lot of salt, so to speak, shortly when the doctrine change happened, only 2 weeks after our Psychic Awakening book came out that gave this doctrine to the Dark Angels. But to Francois's point about it counting, and we'll get into this, I guess, in a little bit, but their specific warlord trait does actually allow you to get that in play.
That's good.
So it does work when you
But think about it though. If you can soup in Space Wolves and use that crazy strat from the Space Wolf book, I think, or was it a Dark Angel strat? The one with the
Dark
lion
Angel
and the
strat,
wolf.
but it's gone.
Oh damn it! I love that strat. It was
We're hoping it comes back in the new supplement. So for those that don't know, Dark Angels had a stratagem called the Lion and the Wolf, which was a kind of very fluffy stratagem. It was kind of dates back to the Horus Heresy, where you had the duel between the Lion and the Wolf, between Russ and between Lionel Johnson. But what it gave you was you basically played out a duel right before the game, and then buffed both between a Space Wolves character and a Dark Angels character, and then buffed both characters up for the rest of the game.
They could take wounds.
Yes. Well, if you flubbed your roll, you took a mortal wound, which means that your characters were starting out the game wounded.
Okay. Well, it's gone, so hopefully it comes back. But we'll start with the kind of synergized. We'll go out of order here now. We'll go into the warlord traits just because we kind of alluded to that, and I think it's on point with what we're talking about right now with the extra range. So I guess we can start with the Deathwing warlord traits. They're kind of, they're not great, but they're not terrible at the same one. So the first one is Lay Low the Mighty, and basically you can reroll wound rolls for attacks made with a melee weapon against character units or units with a wounds characteristic of 8 or more by a Deathwing unit within 6 inches of this warlord. I really kind of like this one for things like Magnus or vehicles or knights. Like, the Deathwing knights, which we'll talk about later, sometimes can struggle to wound certain high toughness things. And I thought that maybe this would be cool. But since you have to choose warlord traits in your list, it's not so great. The next one, which I guess I'll just take this one as well, since as the Deathwing player, these are the ones I know, and I'll let you guys take the Ravenwing, is Watched. And it's basically a free once per game dispel, or you basically automatically pass it, Deny the Witch, and stop a power. I really like this because anything that stops a Deny the Witch is great. But on the other hand, not every army has a Psyker. Not every army has a power that you need to stop. And with the fact that you can't change warlord traits in your list anymore, I think this is a very powerful one, but I think nobody will play it.
It's meta dependent. Like if your local meta has a lot of Psychers, then you might just have that as insurance in your back pocket.
Yeah, but but I think what we were alluding to is that you guys there's a better one, right?
There's better ones, yes.
So that's the Deathwing. I'll let you guys take the Ravenwing.
I'll let Jeremy go because that's his baby, I think.
I too love my Ravenwing. So the first one is Impeccable Mobility. Basically what this gives you is if you advance your Ravenwing, so therefore triggering your 4-up invulnerable save from Jink, you can then fire your assault weapons with no penalty. That's really simple, really nice. It's an aura. So if you're running down the field with a whole bunch of Black Knights, which are the plasma bikes, which are assault, you can advance them. They then have a 4-up against shooting, and they take no penalty from having advanced and firing their assault weapons.
Which is crazy because they move 14, so and they have an 18-inch. Like you're basically you're hitting anything you want. You're hitting all the angles around ruins, and that's pretty good.
The next one is Tactically Flexible. Now, this one is actually really fun. Once per battle at the start of your battle round, you select a combat doctrine that is not currently active. Until the end of that battle round, this warlord trait has the following ability. It's an aura. When resolving an attack made by a model in a friendly Ravenwing unit within 6 of this warlord, you can treat the chosen doctrine as being active instead of the currently active doctrine. So you can choose in turn 4 to have a round of Devastator for all of your Ravenwing within 6 inches. Or on turn 1, you can choose to have the Assault Doctrine active.
So that's the big one. Because I guess like Francois playing Whitecars, a lot of times he has to wait till turn 3 to get his Assault engaged.
Not anymore.
Well, not anymore, but
but I need to pay 2 CP for it, which is pretty hefty. This gives it to you for free, which is pretty.
With
good.
just a warlord trait, and you could pick and choose whenever you need it, right? So I kind of like that, being able to engage a lot earlier with your Ravenwing, and because those Black Knights, when equipped properly, can really do a lot of damage. But the other thing too is I could see this being used a lot with the heavy weapons and some of the vehicles, maybe, if it does apply to some of them.
It's used quite heavily with Talon Masters, which are the character gunboats that, Francois has had the joy of facing 2 of those in one round. They both have twin assault cannon. They have a twin assault cannon and a twin heavy bolter. And yes, they got the updated heavy bolter profile. They have a weapon skill of 2, a ballistic skill of 2. So they're basically dumping everything into there. And so you can get an additional turn of Devastator with them, which is an additional turn of extra 6-inch range, so 30-inch assault cannons, and AP2 instead of AP1.
Yeah, which is just so good. So this is kind of so far the number one warlord trait.
And then the next one, the last one, is Outrider, and it's much more situational. What it is basically is your warlord and one other Ravenwing unit can then move 12 inches as if it's your movement phase. And you have to finish your move more than 9 inches away from enemy models, but this is really powerful if you want to, for example, if you're running a Ravenwing heavy list and you want to move block with a big squad of bikes, you can do that.
Yeah, and the only thing is I think when we get into strats, this is good for maybe pregame, but there's strats that kind of allow you to get up in the grill as well a lot faster. So I kind of was like, tactical flexibility is the one that screamed out to me. Because I do have a whole shelf of Deathwing Black Knights sitting there unpainted. So maybe
go. Motivation. There was one other warlord trait that went away, and when I describe it to you, you'll know exactly why. Because these are straight from Psychic Awakening. They've been copied over and updated to work with the 9th rule set. The one that went away was Inexorable, which basically said that your warlord cannot be wounded on an unmodified 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah, there's a reason that went away. Yeah,
it's now built in.
Yeah, so there's no pointing. They should have left it in for those people that don't read. But so we'll move on to the. Yeah, it is mean. We'll move on to the relics. I don't want to go through these like we went through the warlord tricks. I don't think they're as prevalent, but I think there's a couple really good ones. So the one that I want to start with, which is kind of greedy of me, but the Pendant of Remembrance. This was right out of Psychic Awakening. This is a fantastic item. You give it to a Deathwing Ancient model, and obviously from the Marine Codex review we did, you're going to definitely want to take Deathwing Ancients, especially if you're running Deathwing. And basically, the bearer gives all friendly Deathwing infantry models within 6 inches a 5-up Feel No Pain, or they ignore a wound on a 5-up. So you're talking about Terminator models with the new Storm Shield, so 4-up invul, 1-up save and cover, 1-up save and open, 0-up save and cover, and then now 5-up Feel No Pain, and they've all been given an extra wound to be 3 wounds. So 10 Terminators is now a hell of a hard object to move on the tabletop. So I definitely like that item. And then I'll give it to Jeremy next. Is there another item that you like?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of others, but the other one that's really, in my mind, an auto take, and it's in every single one of my lists, is the Reliquary of the Repentant. So it's a Ravenwing biker model relic, so you can put it on any of the little characters, so like a Ravenwing Apothecary. And what it is, it's a 3-inch aura that's -1 to enemy invuln saves.
So good against Custodes. Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah. So you just you and we'll talk about how you do this, but you lob that thing down the field, sit it next to, say some Harlequins or some Custodes, and just be like, yep, you have a 5-up invulnerable save now. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah,
Or I guess
Harlequins is the
Custodians
big
don't
one.
Yeah.
Because with the custodians, whatever, they'll be like, oh, you get no rerolls, and we're going to transhuman and blah 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 blah. But against like, if you can get that invul down on the Harlequin or a certain chaos units as well, somebody takes like the Super Chicken or Magnus, and if you can get him within Magnus and maybe somehow stop his buff to his invul save, you could really take that guy off or do a lot of wounds to him. And
There's very few competitive lists in the game right now that don't, to at least a certain degree, rely on invulnerable saves. So it's really powerful.
oh yeah, so good. Francois, do you have a relic pick or?
Well, I had 3 circled. You've already talked about 2 of them, so I'll go
There
to the
you
last
go.
one that I circled in the index. I do. It's probably, it pales in comparison to the other 2 we've already talked about, but I kind of like the standard of the Unforgiving Hunt, because a +1 to advance and charge, it doesn't sound like much, like just an extra inch, but it's the reliability of knowing that, sometimes you roll that 1, 2, 3 on your advance and you're like, I just need that extra little bit. Same thing for your charges. And having that, I think, especially for hit and run units like Ravenwing, could be helpful. Probably not as much as the Pennant of Remembrance or the Reliquary, but it's good.
Yeah. One thing to make note of is that means that you have a 7-inch advance on your bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
That's debatable because it's an Auto 6, so it's not actually a roll. So I've seen people argue that because you don't roll the dice, you don't get the +1. But you're getting into rules lawyer nitpicky territory.
We could get into that, but there's already been an FAQ where Evil Sun's bikers get the benefit.
Okay, so that's great. I didn't know that. I would play it, but you get the extra 1. But I've had people try to explain to me that you don't get it.
Yeah. But the present,
it's a fun relic. If you're running like a bike heavy list, it's great.
Which you know me, I love my bikes, so that's why I kind of stood out.
A little bit too much sometimes. No, I think that I would say that as a TO or judge, the precedent has been set that even it still counts as rolling. It's just you roll an Auto 6. But it's hard to say. It could always be clearer. Let's put it that way.
Well, there's a lot of things in this game that could be clearer.
Okay, so I'll hand it over to you guys. So, I'd say there's not a lot of stratagems in the new kind of index. There's 7 of them, and most of them I think are pretty decent. So
there's some like S tier strats in there.
So I think we could kind of. Is there any that you guys want to bring up first, or I guess we'll give it to Jeremy. He gets first pick.
He's going to talk about one trick that he's done to me a few times.
I think I know which one. It's either FT or CA, right?
Yeah, it's definitely CA. Combined Assault is an absolutely amazing rule or a stratagem. 2 command points, and it allows you to bring in a Deathwing unit with just outside 6 inches of enemy models, wholly within 6 inches of a Ravenwing biker unit. And the amazing part of this is that we have Ravenwing biker characters. So you can have a screened character that sits back, and then on turn 2 shoots forward with the other one, FT, and then drops 5 Deathwing Knights on your doorstep.
That
who then have a
everyone
6-inch charge.
Full throttle, which allows you to double move your unit of Ravenwing.
Yep, and
so this is why the saltiest people about this index are Custodes players, and why it's probably good that Darren is not here, because this combined assault strat is basically a better Vexilla teleport homer, because it's not keyed to a specific model, it's cheaper CP-wise, and it's so much more flexible to bring in your big heavy hitting unit.
Yeah, and like rolling a 6 with a reroll is very, very, very good odds. And we should point out you do have to roll a 6 unless you get the +1 to your charge.
If you have a chaplain there with the +2, like there are ways
even that, yes,
to make this basically an auto charge.
Yeah, which is fantastic. But even then, it's great. So I guess I'll just take the full throttle because it was kind of spoiled. In your movement phase, after moving a Ravenwing unit from your army, you can make another move for 1 CP. However, it says you can only advance once. But when you're moving 14 inches and you're advancing 6, it doesn't really matter. You're going from one end of the board, hidden in cover, around terrain to the other end, and you're basically deploying a Deathwing Terminator unit wherever you want.
Yeah, the Whitecars have a similar, if not identical, strat. It's really powerful.
Do you want to take one, Francois?
Yeah, so I had 4 circled. We've talked about 2, so I'll talk about my favorite from a fluff perspective anyway, but it's still very powerful, I think. Outnumbered, but never outmatched. Basically, when you pick a Deathwing unit from your army, you would pretty much always do that on a big unit of Terminators or Knights. But if they are fighting an enemy unit with 10 or more models, they gain an attack, which it's great because those elite armies that have like very powerful individual models sometimes struggle with hordes. Like, sure, Deathwing Terminators will blend enemy units, but they can have trouble with, I don't know, 30 Termagants with Catalyst on that are immune to morale. It's going to take a while to chew through that. Or Necron Warriors with a 5-up invuln from a Chronomancer, right? And then all of a sudden, you get 10 more attacks because you 10 Terminators each gain an attack from being outnumbered but never outmatched. For 1 CP, that's really strong.
Yeah, I think it's more of just a tool in the toolbox, right? Yeah, you're not going to use it a lot of the time, but when you do need it, remember you have it. 1 CP, bang, right? Kill those couple extra models. Great. Do you want to take the next one, Jeremy? What's your choice?
Yeah, so probably the other one that I really enjoy is would be high speed focus. It's kind of hard to argue with it. Basically, all it is you during your opponent's shooting phase when they target a unit, you give a Ravenwing unit a 4+ invulnerable save.
Yeah, you can't argue with that for 1 CP.
Yeah, so your big blob of bikes or your plane or your land speeder, it now has a 4+ invulnerable save, and it becomes much more difficult to shift.
Yeah. So the one I like is Stand Firm. The next one, I just like because, well, obviously I'm a Deathwing player, so being able to give your Terminator unit +1 toughness for 1 CP is huge, especially when they're toughness 4 models. There is a ridiculous amount of strength 8 in the game, and just being able to make them wound on a worse is way better.
Well, or even strength 4. Like, you get it being shot at by a bunch of bolters with AP2 because Tech Doctrine. You can go, you know what? Now you're wound me on 5s. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And in my experience, that's actually the more strong thing, is what Francois mentioned, because strength 8, who cares? It's wounding me on a 4 because I have inner circle.
That's true too now. Yeah,
whereas
I never thought about that now.
Bolters are actually what tend to, on an efficiency point, really whittle down Deathwing units. So if you immediately make yourself T5, like my 10-man unit is now toughness 5, good luck. I now have, with my banner, I am now a Death Guard Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. That's huge. Yeah, and the fact that you can kind of pick and choose the unit, so sometimes you can bait stuff out and then deploy that to, defensive strat. I definitely like it, especially we've kind of alluded to Deathwing Knights becoming very similar to Death Guard Terminators. So is there any other ones we want to talk about?
I think that's about it. There's some from you've already done the Space Marine review, but there's some from the Space Marine Codex that are really strong when combined with Archangel's units. But for example, if you have a Ravenwing bike unit that's advanced that now has Jink active, use high speed focus on it, and that's now also -1 to be shot at.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's one maybe. I mean, we've talked about almost all of them, but Evasive Assault is also situationally really good because the Ravenwing invulnerable save is only against shooting, but for 1 CP now you can have a 5-up invulnerable save in combat, which is really nice to have.
Better than nothing, yeah. Well, that's and the thing I really love about stratagems in the game in general is they just give you the tools in your toolbox, right? Like, if you need it, you need it, right? And sometimes you might need 1 bike to live on 1 objective to win the game, so you pop that strat, right? That's just huge, more than enough. So I guess we'll move on to the units. So the Dark Angels got, I think compared to the other supplements, the most, or quite a few, custom units that are Dark Angels only.
That's because they have a million special characters.
Well, that's part of it as well. So we won't get into all the details of the characters. We'll just go through maybe the gist of what they do for the army and things of that nature. So who wants to take Asriel?
Oh, I'm going to take Asriel.
That's what I thought. Yeah, we'll start with you.
So Asriel is the Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels. He's a chapter master in rules. So he's 170 points, which is actually pretty cheap for a chapter master and for everything else that he hands out. So he has his Captain Aura. He has Inner Circle, which is great. If he's your Warlord, he gives you an additional 2 command points, which is awesome. And then the 2 things that really make him unique are the Watcher in the Dark, which follows him around carrying his helmet. Gives you, once per game, you can deny a psychic power. As if you're a Psyker.
And you can re-roll it if it's chaos. So
yes, which
and
is
that's when you might really need it when they're trying to get rid of your invul save on your Terminators.
pretty much. And then the one that really defines Asriel and has defined Asriel for years now is the Lion's Helm Aura, which is it's been changed from 8th, but it's a 4+ invulnerable save to units within 6 inches of Asriel or shooting attacks.
Yeah, that's interesting. And they didn't really talk about vehicles. They used to always kind of qualify vehicles, right?
It says infantry or biker.
It's infantry or biker.
Yeah, but it used to work on the vehicle that he was in traditionally.
Yes. So at the beginning of 8th, it also worked on any Dark Angels unit in the indexes when we were playing Index Hammer.
Which is gross, because Jason took that against me.
That was a weird time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but
only infantry,
it's solid.
only vehicle.
It
bikes.
gives you really durable infantry and bikers. It gives you the ability to set up kind of a starting castle at the beginning that can then deploy out. But at least if you lose first turn and you have really terrible terrain, you don't get shot off the board right away.
Yep. So now, how common is he of a take? You think he's an auto include, or is it list dependent?
I would say he's an almost guaranteed auto take in every list. If you're not running Asriel, you're probably missing out.
Oh, my lists don't have Asriel. Oh,
I can see an exception to that that's staring me in the face, but he's very, very good for sure.
What's the exception? You don't want to get into it?
I'm looking at the next character down, which I think is maybe the one you're interested in, Belial. Which, by the way, I'd like to point out that all of the Dark Angel special character names are like fallen angels or demon names, which maybe jives with this persistent joke that they're actually chaos. They're not. They're perfectly loyal. But Belial, if you're taking either for fluff reason or because you think they're actually really good, and they are, if you're taking mostly Terminators, mostly Deathwing, then Belial gives you the same thing that Asriel does, the Chapter Master rerolls, because he's the Lord of the Deathwing, so he gives Chapter Master equivalent reroll to the Deathwing. But he doesn't give the 4++, but you don't care, because your Terminators have invulns anyway. And he's cheaper. So there's I could see a reason for taking him instead if you're running a bunch of Terminators.
Yeah, and you reroll hits a 1, right? It's the same as a Chapter Master, but he's also really cheap for what he is. 6 wound Terminator character, -1 to hit in combat.
Yeah, he gives the full reroll to a single unit like a Chapter Master, but it has to be a Deathwing unit, which if you're mostly running Deathwing, then, I mean, fine.
Well, and in my mind, it's a very specific Deathwing unit, but
yes, yes, indeed.
I think his cost is what makes him very attractive as well.
He's
to me,
140, I think. Like he's 30-point difference. It's actually significant.
Yep. So I guess the next one is Samuel. He's back. He's basically riding his bike, which is a giant plasma cannon, and he's great for what he is. He's not in any of my lists, but basically he's the same as any other Chapter Master. And he has a 4-up invul save, and that's really about it. He's the standard. He's a character with a plasma gun. So if you're looking for a character to kind of hide behind your lines, add some more range shooting. If you're taking like him, and we'll get to it eventually, but some of the other characters, he just adds more firepower. He's decent in combat, and he's got 8 wounds, so he's very survivable. He can jump out end game, grab an objective, and maybe live. And he has a decent move as well, 15 inches.
So this is, I think, one of the greatest things about this army is the flavor is there everywhere. So you've got a general Chapter Master, but you've got a guy who basically acts like a Chapter Master for the Deathwing, and then a guy who basically acts as a Chapter Master for the Ravenwing. And so whichever list you end up taking, there's a great support character to go with it. It's awesome.
Yep. And it kind of fits the whole, they're kind of a
Combined
legion.
Arms, assault, kind of.
In a way that because other Marines don't essentially have 3 Chapter Master choices like this one does. So it's it's nice to have, and it's very different. But I think Asriel kind of takes the cake, unless of course you're going for a more specialized list.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess the next character, I'll give it to you, Jeremy.
Yeah. So Ezekiel, he's our Master Librarian, or Chief Librarian rather. He's a little weird right now. He has a bunch of special rules that have to deal with the Interromancy discipline, which is our special librarian powers, which don't exist right now.
Yeah, I know. That's so bad. Hey?
So I'm almost just going to say right now Ezekiel's a complete pass until the supplement comes out, whenever that is, because the rules and what he's been costed for, he doesn't actually have an interaction.
You might as well bring just a basic Psyker.
Yeah,
I guess like
essentially.
the only reason you would take him is for his book, which is it hasn't changed, but it's +1 attack.
Yeah, but it doesn't stack with shock assault.
Yeah, so
So
you're not
it's
going to take
really
Ezekiel.
situational.
And Orcs is correcting you, Jeremy. They call them sorcerers, he says. Okay, now the next one's pretty exciting, so I'll let Francois. I know I was sighing
I
too.
love
The chat is just
Asmodai.
hilarious.
I love that guy, the angriest chaplain in existence in all of the Space Marines. You know, chaplains are not very humorous fellows in general. They don't tend to joke around and banter. Asmodai
He has the most updated model as well.
He's the angriest of all of the chaplains. He's the exemplar of hate, which is an awesome role. So I mean, I don't think that he's as strong as some of the other named character choices there, but he's a cool like fluff choice, I think. So whenever you roll the Litany of Hate, you get basically the Master of Sanctity roll, so you get +1 to that roll. But also, it's a bigger aura. It's a 3-inch aura instead. So he's cool. I don't. Maybe Jeremy can see ways that he works well, but I think you might as well just take a Master of Sanctity instead.
Yeah, I'd agree. Asmodai in the previous edition actually gave you +1 attacks to infantry and bikers, which was absolutely amazing. The other thing is that unlike other named chaplains, he's not a Master of Sanctity in and of himself, because he is not the Dark Angel's Master of Sanctity.
Yeah, he only acts that way for the Litany of Hate.
Yeah.
So unfortunate.
The one thing I will actually bring up with Asmodai, and because we won't talk about them in detail, but he has a rule that all of the other Interrogator chaplains have. That's kind of our special flavor of chaplain, which is the Aura of Dread. When an enemy unit is within 6 inches of this model, it counts as below half strength.
Yeah, so that's more for leadership, right? They'll run away.
Yeah, they'll run away on ones and twos.
Yeah, it's a fun flavor thing.
Yeah, it's a flavor thing. It'd be nice if it was like counts as half the models for scoring objectives. Then he'd be broken. But because I read it at first, I was like, wait, reread it. Oh, okay. Okay, so we'll go to the next one is the Interrogator Chaplain, and they're basically just chaplains at this point.
With more hate.
Hate, and they have an Aura of Dread special rule. And
I do love their fluff. Like their job is basically to hunt the fallen and make them repent by torturing them to death. It's great.
Yeah. There is a really fun combination because normal chaplains don't have weapon options. Mm-hmm. You have your Rosarius and that's it. Interrogator chaplains, because of a couple like limited edition models have been released over the years that are still sold today, you actually have a melee weapon option. So you can give these guys a chainsword, a power fist, a thunder hammer, which then when you combine it, and so something that people have recently come up with is everyone knows about the Teeth of Terra.
Yeah.
Well, when you take the Teeth of Terra and then give a Master of Sanctity Interrogator Chaplain Mantra of Strength, which gives him +1 strength, attack, and damage on his weapon, and then give him Exhortation of Rage for +1 to wound, and then give him Imperium Sword, and then if you really want to go crazy, stack a Warlord trait on them and give them a second Warlord trait. But right now we don't have that possibility. But it's something like 9 or 10 strength, 6 attacks, AP2, 3 damage, with +1 to wound.
Yeah, it's gross.
That is gross. I really like it a lot.
So there's some fun combinations with Interrogator Chaplains because of that fluff, where they're able to equip weapons other than just their crux.
And you give him a jump pack, which is really nice when you kind of have this explosive guy that's almost like a Smash Captain on steroids, right?
I mean, yeah, he's a better Smash Captain, basically.
Yep.
Great. So that's him. So the next one is the Talon Master. And we talked about these a bit earlier. It's basically a land speeder kit that had originally come out in the Dark Angel sprue. It was an upgrade for the old land speeder. It's great. It has a twin assault cannon. It has a twin heavy bolter. We talked about some of the warlord traits that could kind of impact it and stack it earlier. But turn 1, you're essentially having a whole bunch of shots at -2 AP. So it does a lot of damage. It's also a character, so you can't really target it that easily. And it has 8 wounds.
And then the other thing is that if you're running it in a Ravenwing heavy list, is that they give ignore cover on one unit. So you choose an enemy unit, and then all Ravenwing within 6 inches of that Talon Master ignore the effects of cover. Now, that's just for saving throws. So you still take the penalty for dense cover and all of that. But it's really nice if you want to, say, clear some eliminators or some scouts with camel cloaks off of an objective where they're getting, +2 to their saves.
And the other great thing is they basically count as a lieutenant. So you can have 2 of them per HQ slot, essentially.
Yeah. So they also grant the reroll 1s to wound rolls for all Dark Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those lieutenant rules are awesome, and I'm honestly, I actually think that that's a bit much that they put that on the Talon Master, but because every list that I used to write and try to run, you always would have to take like an extra battalion to get 3 Talon Masters in, or 2, because Jason used to always run 2 Talon Masters. But now you can essentially take your Asriel and 3 of these guys, or 2, which is more likely, is you just take the 2 for the 1 HQ slot. You take your Chaplain, you take your Asriel, and you're done, right?
Yeah, we'll see. The supplement might stop that, or they might fact it. Like it's
they only get better.
Much.
They only get better, man.
I mean, because the 2 lieutenant per slot always felt fluffy but ridiculous, because no one's going to take 2 lieutenants, right? 2 Ravenwing Talon Masters for a single HQ slot is like, yeah, that's actually kind of swings the other way. Now it's too strong.
They should have made them elites. Like,
oh god.
But okay, so the next one is actually kind of a newer character. So why don't you take that one, Jeremy?
Yeah, so Lazarus, this was the named character that came out with Psychic Awakening last January. His backstory is kind of cool. Per his namesake, he was a firstborn, an old Marine that crossed the Rubicon after suffering a horrible injury that was so severe that not even Dreadnought would survive, would keep him alive. And his mortal injuries were done by a Psyker, so he has a absolutely raging hatred against Psykers. And so his rules reflect this. So like his weapon, Enmity's Edge, does double damage against Psykers. He has a Spirit Shield Helm, which is a 6-inch aura of 5+ Feel No Pain for all Dark Angels units against mortal wounds, which is very strong, especially if you're in a Psyker heavy meta. And then he's just a regular captain, so he gets his rights of battle. And then the last thing is that he has what is now a very unique rule, is that if he's killed in melee, he then gets to pile in and fight.
Whew. Do you think he's an include?
Even if he's already fought?
Yeah. He's what, 110, 120 points?
Something around there. He is...
Yeah, I think
he's 110 points. He's actually quite well costed for what he gives compared to a traditional Primaris captain is quite good.
Yeah, but he's competing for HQ slots with a lot of, in my opinion, better choices.
100%.
Yeah. Oh, it's cool he's in there. Next, we have Interrogation Chaplain and Terminator armor. Same as above, nothing different. So I'll hand over to you, Francois, for the Apothecary.
Oh, the Deathwing Apothecary. Perhaps the best unit in this entire index. Because somehow, when they redid the Space Marine Codex, they made the Apothecary arguably the best unit in there, because of what you can do with it, rezzing models for free if you upgrade him, the 6-up ignore wound aura. Now you take all of that and you put it on a bike that moves really, really fast, and you give it a keyword that lets him do all sorts of shenanigans, like shoot up, double move, bring in Terminators. I know Jeremy uses that guy to bring in his Terminators because it's the one single model you can all of a sudden shoot up the field and have the Terminators in on there. He's low-key, perhaps the best unit in this entire index.
Now, that would be the Ravenwing Apothecary.
Yeah, but it's
not the
I got ahead of myself.
I was going to interrupt you, but I was like, whatever, it applies. So whatever
Deathwing, Ravenwing, same difference. I just ran with it because I was too excited to talk about the Ravenwing.
One's on a bike, one's in Terminator armor.
Yeah, don't take the Deathwing one. Take the Ravenwing one.
But the nice thing about them is that all of their auras affect both infantry and bikes, so it's not really an issue, which is really nice.
Mobility is a big deal.
But the mobility is a huge deal with the Ravenwing one, and unless you really, really need the Deathwing guy for like a certain item delivery or something like that, but it doesn't make sense because why would you give a 6+ feel no pain when you have an item that you give on an ancient to give a 5-up? So I would say yes, you're right. The Deathwing Apothecary is I have one converted up too, and I was like, oh, you're never gonna see the table.
The Ravenwing one though, very very good.
Great. Yeah, which is fine. Same role, same thing. And I guess the champions are the same between the Deathwing and the Ravenwing as well, or very similar. So they're the same as most champions, just one's in Terminator armor and one's in on a bike, which is, and they're kind of lackluster. Anything interesting about the champion you guys want to discuss, or I don't think you'll take it personally.
No, not really.
Either of them, to be honest.
They both have a bit of an identity crisis when it comes to their rules and what they're good at. The Deathwing champion gets a bonus against hordes, but is a character hunter, so you don't really know what you're doing with the unit.
Precisely, and in Dark Angels, for the most part, slots aren't an issue. So taking a command squad to get the champion for free is like not for free, sorry, but like outside of the force arc isn't a big deal because the units are so expensive anyway that you probably A, can't afford them, or B, you don't want to. So the next one is probably my favorite thing in this entire book, obviously. It's the Deathwing Terminator Squad. And so what makes Deathwing Terminators different than normal Terminators? And actually, I will say this. We still get to use normal Terminators. For now.
Yeah, for now, because you have access to the Spishman units. It would be very weird, and I don't know why you would, but...
Well, you wouldn't, essentially, unless you... Yeah, I don't think you ever would. So the big thing about Deathwing Terminators is they have the inner circle rule, which is huge because they hunt the fallen. They basically have transhuman all the time. So with the Terminators, as I think I said earlier, the Terminators getting a buff to both wounds, and I think the Storm Shield is a buff, the 4+ with +1 save, personally. The other thing is with Deathwing Terminators is you can mix and match weapons, which historically has been kind of interesting. Is you could take a couple Thunderhammer Storm Shields, then you could take a couple guys with Storm Bolters and missile launchers. And so you can kind of mix the unit to do whatever you feel it should do, which is always really nice to have kind of that versatility. Generally, though, I think a lot of people are currently just running them in their shooty variant and using them more as the troops on the board to kind of stay alive and take objectives. But any take on that?
Well, even in the shooty version, there's still no slouch in combat, right?
Well, they have
they have power fist, or chain fist for that matter.
Well, Chain Fist got a real buff in the last book, right? Essentially, because they were almost unplayable before. So
yeah. So one variant that I've been doing some test games with these on TTS, and one variant of the Deathwing Terminator Squad that's actually proven to be really effective is a pure melee unit.
Okay. 3
Thunderhammer Storm Shields. So you basically get a little bit of that durability, a little bit of that punch, and then 7 Lightning Claw Terminators.
Oh, really?
And so, because with the Lightning Claw rule change, you get an extra attack for each Lightning Claw that you take.
Yes.
So now these Terminators have 5 attacks on the charge.
That's really good.
And so you're mowing through almost anything that you go into, whether it's a tank because you got your Thunderhammers for that, or a bunch of medium to elite infantry because you've got your Lightning Claws, which are rerolling all their wounds, and they're at AP2 or AP3 if you're in the Assault Doctrine.
Yep. And are they? What's the difference in price? They're a lot cheaper. They're 10 points cheaper.
Yeah, they're a lot cheaper. So like a Power Fist and Stormbolter Terminator is 38 points a model. Twin Lightning Claws is 33 points.
Yeah, that's a bargain for a transhuman rerolling wounds, -2, 1 damage. 1 damage is kind of lackluster in the modern meta, but it's still something. No, I'll have to give that a shot then. I never thought of that. That sounds really good. I always thought the opposite more. Take like the mixed unit, take the missile, so you could drop in, shoot something, and also charge it and kind of damage it. Because even a guy with a Power Fist, like the rest of the unit, Power Fist is great. But as far as taking normal Terminators, I don't think with the Inner Circle rule you ever will, besides these guys. And besides, the points cost on Terminators is so high as it is that it's not like you need to take 9 Terminator units, right? Like 3 Assault, 3 Regular, 3 Deathwing, which may have previously been the case, but now you don't. They're just too expensive. So definitely great. I think they got a huge buff and they're now playable. And they might even be if you're talking about standard Terminators, none of the special variants, they might be one of the best Terminators in the game. Or they are the best in the game. Okay, so I'll let you take this one, Francois.
Oh, the Deathwing Knights. Such a fantastic unit.
Or you can both talk about it. It's fine.
I mean, I know that Jeremy has used them to great effect. I'm particularly a fan of their special weapons. So basically, in the squad, the sergeant has a weapon called the Flail of the Unforgiven, which right there, just because of the name, you know it's going to be an awesome weapon. But basically, it works a lot like the Nurgle flails, where damage carries over. And damage carrying over is really powerful when you're running into these horde units that might otherwise target you down. And you also don't waste damage. So if you're hitting, it's damage 2. So if you're hitting a 3-wound model, it would take you 2 hits to kill 1 model, but now it takes you 3 hits to kill 2, right? So the damage spillover is quite good. And their regular weapons for the regular guy is called the Mace of Absolution, also an awesome name.
Crazy.
And it's basically a power fist, a thunder hammer that doesn't have a minus to hit.
Yeah, and it's so like that's crazy. Strength times 2, -2, 3 damage. That 3 damage range is just so valuable nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh, especially.
And of course, they have storm shields and they're Terminators, so they're super hard to kill.
And they have inner circle, and you can deploy them using knights. Sorry, Deathwing Knights.
I will say
Ravenwing Knights.
The price is high on them. They're 47 points a model. So when you compare that to the Deathwing Terminators and you look at the math, I'm not sure they always come out ahead, but they're still a really strong hammer unit.
So a Thunderhammer Storm Shield Deathwing Terminator is 43 points. So you're paying 4 points more for these guys.
Yeah.
And the reason you're paying 4 points more for these guys is partly because of the maces, but also their weapon skill 2.
Yes.
Right.
They were buffed. In the 8th edition, they were weapon skill 3. Now they're weapon skill 2. So they're always hitting on 2s with their Thunder Hammers.
Since they're Thunder Hammers that don't have the penalty. So, okay, I take it back. They're worth the extra points.
They're definitely worth the points. And their cost aside, I think 5 of the, like 1, 2 units of 5, maybe 1 unit of 10. I don't know.
Go nuts. Take a unit of 10.
But the problem with, so I was looking at my list, particularly because I have 20 of these guys, and I just don't think a unit of 10, like, you're either going to hit something and overkill it, or you're going to have to overcommit with it for 470 points.
Fair.
I like having 2 units of 5 because it allows you maybe turn 2, drop one in within 6 inches, hit, clear an objective, fight a unit, absorb all the counter firepower, and then you could do it again, right? Which is really neat.
Plus, who doesn't want a second Flail of the Unforgiven in their list?
That's the other thing. They're very good. I like them. What are you running in your list right now, Jeremy?
Right now, I'm actually not running any Deathwing Knights, which is a bit. Yeah, I know, and it pains me too because I've got 10 of them that are painted up really nicely, and I loved running them. I'm leaning more towards going back to 2 units of 5 because what I've been running right now is what I'm testing out the most right now is 2 of those Deathwing Terminator melee units, those kind of blenders with the 3 Thunderhammers and 7 Lightning Claw. Those I was running 2 blocks of those, and they were doing really good work. But I'm thinking of removing one of them and bringing back in 2 5-man Deathwing Knight squads because they're really difficult to shift, especially if you get them with an apothecary, which is, you know, you've talked about how strong the apothecary is. Well, now you have an apothecary that's bringing back a 3-wound Terminator that has a storm shield every turn.
And if you put the Ancient near them, I don't know if that's even feasible, but if you do, you give them their 5-up, feel no pain. But he's probably going to be back with your, Terminators that are kind of holding your field. But
one of the fun tricks actually is that the Blade Guard Ancient gets the Deathwing keyword.
Yeah, which is really weird,
you
right?
You can put the banner on him and throw him and swing and zip him forward in an impulsor with some Blade Guard.
Do the Blade Guard also get it? Yeah, they get the Deathwing keyword, which is
you
crazy.
Can have
so
some
all
Blade
those strats
backed
work
up by him, and then a Deathwing unit that basically drops as your hammer.
So does that mean fluff-wise? Because last time I read the fluff, there was a Primaris Marine who uncovered the Fallen, and they essentially executed them. But they've kind of changed that. So now there are actually Primaris Marines, Blade Guards, that are aware of the Fallen and are in the Deathwing, right?
Yep. So
do they count as inner circle? No, right? Or yes?
They don't.
So maybe they don't know. They're just in the Deathwing, but they're not inner circle.
So the thing is that all Deathwing are inner circle per the lore.
Yeah, that's what I thought, right?
But the assumption is right now is that this was a rules mistake. We don't know, but there's two camps of this. One that believe that it was done intentionally. Others that eventually anything that is Deathwing will be Inner Circle. Because one of the other things is that in the Space Marine Codex, they had all these fluff things where they said, oh, this bike unit gets the Ravenwing keyword if it's in a Dark Angels or Successors unit, or this Terminator group gets the Wolf Guard if it's a Space Wolves or Successor. Things like the captain in Terminator armor gets the Deathwing keyword, but it doesn't get Inner Circle. But all Deathwing captains are Inner Circle in the lore.
Yeah, that's a strange one. But then also some of the lore is contradictory because they were anti-Primaris. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I'm actually excited to read the Codex book, the front part, not the rule part. I'm actually really 100%, excited.
Because they've spent the last year and a half, because they had a White Dwarf supplement that came out in September of 2019 that basically blew it all open and said Asriel has accepted Primaris into the innermost circle and has revealed to them the secrets of the fallen. And there was, it's one of these things where like there was some talk of like there would almost be a civil war within the Dark Angels Legion because of his choice to do this. But in the end, everyone said, no, he is the Supreme Grand Master. We will follow him. He knows what's best for the chapter.
Now, so I know this is a tangent and people are like, fluff, screw the fluff, but there is Dark Angel Primaris only sub-chapters, right? Ultima Founding.
There are
Dark Angel chapters. So did it specifically mention them in there? I thought, do they actually pursue the Fallen, or are they kind of left out?
So the interesting thing is that every chapter has its own relationship with the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing is that some chapters kind of view it as some successor chapters say like, well, this isn't our problem. This is the Dark Angels' problem. We view ourselves as redeemed. We are going to just focus on doing things for the Emperor, and that's our loyalty. That's where our focus is. But they'll still come to the Dark Angels and other successor chapters' aid when the Fallen are found. They just don't actively look for them. So
yeah, I remember reading that. I forget which one it is. I think I forget which subchapter it is, but yeah, that's cool.
I'm not going to say it because I know if I get it wrong, that I'm going to be
lynched.
Yeah, I'll be lynched by those that do care more about the fluff than I do. But yeah, I don't know actually in terms of the Ultima Founding how they are handling that. I'm sure that there's plenty of Black Library material waiting to be written to cover that.
Oh, I can't wait! I really can't wait for this Codex book because they're gonna have to cover all that stuff. Yep. This isn't just gonna be a new rules thing. Okay, so we'll move along. Basically, Deathwing command squads, similar to all the other command squads, except it's Terminators. So they basically protect characters within 3 inches. And that's about it. That really changes them. They're a standard Deathwing squad. If you want to spam Terminator units, I guess these would allow you to do more of the standard Terminators. For people like me that have like 50 regular Terminators, I can maybe now field some of them. Then they have the Ravenwing Apothecary, which we already talked about, Francois. Ravenwing Champion, same as the Deathwing, except he's on a bike. Ravenwing Ancient, basically same as the Deathwing one, but on a bike, and same as the regular one. They're just kind of, to change that, I guess, give the Dark Angels that kind of character fluff, so that they have them on bikes, whereas regular Marines don't, which is cool. And they have them in Terminators, which regular Marines don't, which is really nice. So why don't you take the next unit, Jeremy, the Black Knights.
Yeah, so I used these a lot in 8th edition. They're a really kind of Dark Angels bread and butter unit, very glass cannon-y, very much a hit and run style of unit. But what they are is they are bikers with plasma guns instead of bolters. And then they have special, and they can also take a melee weapon as well. So kind of in a departure from the previous edition. So they have a special weapon that's only available to them called Corvus hammers, which are they look really nice. Like they aesthetically, they're really fun. They look like they're on a unit that wants to just zip by and lop your head off. They're strength +1, AP -1, flat 2 damage now, because it used to be that they were 1 damage, and if you roll the wound roll of 6, it was D3. Now they're just flat 2, which is amazing with all the Primaris and 2 wound firstborns that are running around. It's great. It's absolutely amazing. The problem is the cost.
Yeah, they're 40 points each, and they're inner circle, but they don't get the built-in rule, right?
Yeah,
Because
the
they're
only
not
thing that they
infantry.
get from it is that they're immune to morale, which is nice.
Yeah,
But
if you want to take a unit of 10, actually, that can be really, really clutch.
yeah, the
That's
problem
400
is that
points.
they're 40
Sure.
points each. They're the same cost as a regular biker with a plasma gun, which a regular biker with a plasma gun actually has a better output.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The thing
And
I
then
like
you have to pay for their hammers as well for another 5 points because their hammers are no longer free. They were free in the last edition, so you just automatically took them. Everyone built their Black Knights in 8th edition with hammers. Now they're looking at it and saying, how do I get them off if I want to run the unit without?
nobody'll make you do that. You're
No,
totally fine. But like,
Break
and
out
it
the
also
hops,
alludes to earlier, like, so the hammers to me, if you're taking these guys, it's almost a must-have because of what we kind of talked about earlier. Is you can put these guys into the assault doctrine earlier, and then of course they'll actually hit like a ton of bricks and they'll shoot, a lot. But you're talking about a 400-point unit that's probably going to get wiped out in return fire, or at
It
least
has a 4-up invuln, 3 wound, toughness 5. You can still transhuman him, just use the regular strat.
You can't.
You can't?
no.
Transhuman is Primaris only.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're right. Of course,
it's
they
Primaris
changed
only
that.
now.
Sorry, brain space there for a second.
So yeah, you basically they've lost a lot of their. I think if the hammers were free, I think they'd be worth it. But because they have to pay for it, I don't think they're worth it right now, which is unfortunate because they were really good in previous editions.
Yeah, so I think they're a situational pick at best right now.
And they have
if you already have a super cool Ravenwing army and you put it on the field and you have a lot of these guys, it's still going to be good. Just not as good as some of the other options. Like, nothing in here is bad. It's just there's degrees of good.
Well, welcome to Marines, right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Next one is the Dark Shroud. You want to take that, Francois?
That's such an annoying unit. I hate that unit because I've played against it too many times. And -1 to hit is such a feel bad kind of thing. And a -1 to hit aura, it's so strong. I mean, given everything else in this index, I don't know that it's necessarily an auto take like it used to be. But having a bubble of -1 to hit, especially if you combine it with a bubble of 4-up invuln that you can get, it's a pretty strong unit.
The issue, well, so this edition made them almost better because you can hide them now. So a lot of the, like, whenever you saw a Dark Shroud, you would just shoot it, right? That'd be the first target you shoot, and people would be like, "Great, you're shooting my Dark Shroud." But now you can kind of hide it behind a building, and then when you pop your army out, you have it turn 2, turn 3, which is great. Thing is it doesn't stack anymore, so you can't have like -2, -3, minus bajillion, whatever it is. The other thing that's interesting is that it's all friendly Dark Angel units within 6 inches. It's not core units. It's not
it's everything.
Infantry. It's everything. So that's still very powerful.
If for some reason you wanted to play an Astreus, the super heavy tank, it would get it.
So for stuff like that, it'd be worth it. Yeah. I think, too, if you're taking certain builds like Asriel with a bunch of maybe Devastators or other long-range shooting units.
Slugging, Blade Guard, or things like that.
Yeah, you could throw them in there. Your Impulsors at -1 to hits, pretty big deal. I know they got a nerf recently, which a lot of people are upset about, but those things are still hard to kill with a 5-up invul. They're still hard enough, right? So it's definitely good, but you almost don't even need the Impulsors. You can just walk your Blade Guard, as you said. So
that's what I'm doing now with my Whitecars. I'm walking 15 Blade Guard rather than Impulsoring 10. And it's better.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of the Landspeeder Vengeances?
So this unit has kind of been the black sheep of the Dark Angels Codex for a really long time. Prior to this, so it is Dark Angels in of itself. It is a beautiful, big, hunking model. It's got stained glass windows on it, and it's got this gigantic Plasma Storm battery on the back. Now, one of the big problems with it is that in the previous iteration, it was D6 shots, which was just a feel-bad moment when you roll the 1 on your 120-point model for getting 1 shot off. And if you roll the 1 to hit, the plasma, and you had supercharged it because it's plasma, the battery exploded.
Oh my God! Yeah.
You took 3 mortal wounds, and the battery couldn't be used anymore for the rest of the game.
Why would they add that? Right? That's like,
so that's gone. That is now all gone. The gun is now 2d3 shots,
Yep.
which is much more reliable, an average of 4 shots that you'll almost always get.
Blast.
It's blast, which is great. And now if you supercharge it and you roll a 1, you just take a mortal wound.
And it's strength 9 when you supercharge it.
It's
and
strength
8 when
9.
you don't.
3 damage when you supercharge it.
Yeah, so that's very good. And it comes with a heavy bolter.
Yeah, and with the heavy bolter, I think it's like 120 points.
Yeah, it's pretty good deal. The only thing that like I maybe don't necessarily love about it is that when you compare it to like the characters, you know, the Talon Masters, you can just shoot this thing. But at 9 wounds, 3 up save, toughness 6, it might live. -1 to hit.
And it has Jink.
Yeah, it does have Jink. Yeah. Whew.
So it's pretty solid, and it benefits from things like hit and run tactics, which is the ability to fall back and shoot with a speeder storm or bike unit. It's one of these things where some of us are kind of looking at and saying, maybe this thing actually has. Maybe I'll paint the 3 that I own because
you
I
own
want to
3?
put them on the table once. I own 3 of them.
Well, good for you.
I love the look of them.
Yeah, most people don't own that. So this might be one of those units where it's like it's worth it, but most people don't own them already, so you might not see them initially. But I definitely like it. Like plasma's always great, especially with a lot of the more elite armies out there. And this is a 12-inch moving, basically heavy like that's huge to get those angles around the buildings and things like that. It's a big deal to get line of sight. So I like it.
Now, the one thing to note is it's not core.
Yes, you're not getting the rerolls to hit, but you could make it -1, an additional -1, I guess, to hit. Well, no, it doesn't stack. Well, you just make it doesn't have that. No,
Yeah,
so you just make it
would
-1
benefit
to hit.
from the Dark Shroud. It would
For sure.
benefit from things like ignoring cover from the Talon Master, but yeah, because it's like a regular land speeder. It's not core, so it doesn't benefit from rerolls, but it's still pretty good. If your opponent's silly enough to deploy it out in the open and you stand still with it, you get +1 to hit. You're hitting on 2s.
Well, this is gonna be a shocking comment to Marine players. It's normal to not have rerolls on everything. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's normal.
And at 125 points, like the cost is reasonable, I think, for what it is.
I think it's reasonable enough that you could take 3 of them with the Dark Shroud and just kind of move them around.
And how cool would that look too? Yeah.
Because that's only like you're basically about 500 points with that, right? So that's not terrible investment for that much shooting that can all split away at the end of the game. So move on. So did the Dark Talon change at all?
Yeah, I think the gun changed, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, the Rift Cannon got a really interesting rework. So the Rift Cannon is this. I mean, in the fluff, it basically opens up a small portal to the warp, and you take damage as a result of that. So in the past, the way that it worked was it's D3 shots, which is painful because you roll 1 on this thing and you just hate everything. But it's still D3 shots, but it was strength 10, AP 3, flat 3 damage. So when it popped off, it was great. And then if anyone had taken unsaved wounds from it because of that little warp rift opening, you then rolled against this table that was basically the same as its ballistic skill. And based on whether or not you met or exceeded that, you took another D3 mortal wounds. So this thing could put out 12 wounds in a single round of shooting without too much trouble.
Mm-hmm.
The rework to it now is that it's now strength 12, which is pretty bonkers. Still D3 shots, still 18 inches, so very short range. But when it wounds,
50.
it just does 3 mortal wounds.
No saving throw.
No saving throw. It just does 3 mortal wounds, which means that if you hit and wound 3 times with this, that's 9 mortal wounds that you've now done to something. That's 3 dead blade guard without any ability to prevent it.
And it's blast, so if you're shooting at bigger units, it's actually a horde killer of mortal wounds, right?
Well, and it also has bombs, right? So
once per game.
It has a once per game stasis bomb, which is actually really interesting. So it used to be like the other plane bombers where you flew over, you roll the number of dice based on the number of models in the unit, and then you took a mortal wound on a 4-up. The new one is you choose an enemy unit, it takes D3 mortal wounds, and if it's not a vehicle or monster, it can't fall back.
And that's just any unit, right? You could fly over a character and drop a bomb, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought I was reading it wrong because I was like, wait, there's no character protection against that? That seems strong.
Yeah, but the fall back thing is very interesting, and I think that's where maybe somebody who's a bit more savvy with the army and get some of their combos off is you could essentially lock a unit in. Now, and that also counts towards yeah, so you can't fall back at all, even with a stratagem or anything like that. So that's pretty powerful when you have a unit of like knights or something like that. You're like, okay,
and then
we're stuck.
yeah, it's pretty nice. And then it has 2 hurricane bolters. It's
Yeah, just 2 hurricane bolters.
It just has 2 hurricane bolters. Not a big deal. I mean, it doesn't get bolter discipline, so it's not that great. It is a pretty pricey unit, though. It's 210 or 220 points, I think.
210. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, so it's always been pretty expensive, which has always kind of been the problem with it. But it has Jink now, which means it's more durable than it was before because of the change to how Jink works. Because you're always moving it, so it always has a 5-up invulnerable save. And
you could bump that to a 4 for a CP.
Yep. So it's pretty good. I own 2 of them. I don't think that they'll see the table very often outside of like Crusade and more casual games. Like from a competitive standpoint, I probably won't be playing them because they're not that great and they're competing against a lot of better options in the Codex.
I mean, again, we're in the not that great in the marine kind of scheme of things.
Yeah,
so it's still damn good.
You compare it to other flyers and it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's definitely good, but one thing that we've been kind of saying over and over again that hasn't really come up is this Dark Angel stuff is really good, but it's also very expensive. Some of it's cheap, but most of it's very pricey. So when you start adding in, I'm going to take Asriel, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take some, my troop units, and then I'm going to take 2 of these for 400 and something points, or 3 of them for 700. Doesn't leave you a lot left in the army. But I do know a man that owns 7 Dark Talons. So,
did you perchance write a list of what you wanted and then realize it was 4,000 points?
So it was 2,700 points when I wrote the list of what I wanted. Yes, every list. So some books, you write a list, and you're like, oh, I get to add in an extra unit than what I need, right? Whereas all my Dark Angel lists are like 5 to 1,000 points over, and I have to trim. So. Because it just feels like the army got more expensive, and some things got cheaper, but a lot of things went up. So we'll move on to the last unit in the book, and it's traditionally the bastard stepchild of the of the Dark Talon. So it's the other variant in the kit, that the Nephilim. Is this thing worth taking, Jeremy?
I would say that this thing is, if you compare it to the Dark Talon, it's probably twice as good as it. Because one of the big things is that heavy bolters were updated.
Oh yeah,
and a lot of other things that were like heavy bolters were also updated. So this thing has what is the Avenger Mega Bolter.
Oh, I missed that, man. That's crazy.
Which is heavy 10, strength 5, AP 1, 2 damage. It was 1 damage before. Now it's 2 damage.
Oh.
It also has a twin heavy bolter. So you have 16 strength 5 shots at AP 1, 2 damage coming out of this thing.
It's basically a Warthog.
How many points is that thing?
190 points.
Oh, I completely missed that. Whew,
and then it also has 2 Black Sword missile launchers, which are strength 7, AP 3, 2 damage as well. And unless you're shooting at an aircraft model, in which case it has a damage of 4.
And if you're a crazy person, you can replace your Avenger Mega Bolter for a twin las cannon.
No.
Which is funny because before that's what everyone was doing, and a lot of people's Nephilims are built with twin las cannons because that was the better option. Because the Mega Bolter was like it. Yeah,
that's why magnets are the way.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's something that
-2 turn 1. You could also is this effect? No, it's not because it's not core. So you couldn't make this Devastator outside of the first turn.
Yes, you could.
Oh, you can.
So one of the things that we have not talked about is Brilliant Strategist.
Okay, let's talk about Brilliant Strategist.
So all of the chapters have their chapter warlord traits. This is the Dark Angels one.
Okay.
In your command phase, you can select one friendly Dark Angels unit within 6 inches of this warlord. Until the start of your next command phase, if the Tactical Doctrine is active for your army, then each time a model in that unit makes an attack, the Devastator Doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead.
God.
If the Assault Doctrine is active for your army, then each time the models in that unit makes an attack, the Tactical Doctrine is considered to be active for that attack instead. So basically, if you're running an army that is doing Devastator, Tactical, and then Assault, you have 3 turns of Devastator with any unit in your army.
Well, you need to have the jet fighter close enough to your warlord, which is going to be pretty hard because it doesn't actually have the hover jet rule.
Yes, that is a caveat to it. So for the jet fighter, it's less of an interaction.
You just
But
move
for
him on a
others-
bike twice. Boop, boop, boop.
Take a captain on a bike with Brilliant Strategist and go.
Go. And then turn 1. I know that might not work out. But anyway, that's crazy. That's a lot of shots. This could be really good for under 200 points.
Yeah, so this is
You
one
might
that we're
wanna take
looking at
3.
with like. Yeah, but then you have to run 2 detachments.
That's true.
I think
Ugh.
2 would
just
be a
take 2.
reasonable
Two's
number to
perfect.
take.
2's perfect. Yeah, I always like to go 3 of everything that's good, but that's like my downside. No, 2 would be really nice for sure. Oh my god. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Cool. So that's it for the units in the Dark Angel kind of supplement. I know we'll get an updated book in probably a couple months or years or whatever it is, and we'll see.
They have said that we will be alongside the first Xenos Codex of 2021, sometime in early 2021. So the current theory is that we're January because when they did the Codex map, they showed an Imperium book and a Xenos book, but we don't know this. This is what a lot of us are hoping for, that January we have.
It's a reasonable guess.
Because it's the last one that needs to be done aside from Black Templars.
And the nice thing is, like, that fits with a Christmas release of The Lion, right? If we're wish listing.
Yeah, that's pretty much on the top of every Dark Angels player's wish list is the Lion in 40k.
I actually hope he doesn't come out, because if he does, I'm going to end up with a 4th Space Marine army.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
You told me this, and so tell you what, you just buy the Lion for me, and I will proxy your army for you.
Okay, yeah, maybe we'll do that.
What's the so I guess before we kind of move on to kind of approximates what's in our list, what do you guys think the power level is of this supplement compared to the normal Marines? Like, I think it's generally assumed that Marines in general are in the upper echelon. Now, it might be a specific, like, it's generally like people are talking more about salamanders when they say that. Where do you think the Dark Angels fit in?
I think it's about there. I mean, obviously, this is all theory to me. Jeremy's actually played some games, so you know better. But looking at the rules, I can see a lot of strong rule interactions there. So I'd say my guess would be somewhere around Whitecars, Salamanders, Ultramarines, kind of the top half of the existing Space Marine chapters.
Okay. You concur, Jeremy?
Yeah, so I've played probably about 10 games with the new rules, and most of them have been Terminator heavy lists, which is kind of where the focus has been. I'll probably eventually start experimenting more with the Ravenwing side, but the big focus is, of course, is just on these big durable blobs of, and we'll talk about like what we take in our list, but like of objective secure Terminators. And it is just absolutely glorious watching these guys walk down the field and things just bounce off of them.
Yeah, that's the crazy one. I definitely think it's up there. I think you can still take a lot of the stuff that makes normal Marines really good and powerful, and then you can add in that Dark Angel flavor to it. Like, if Deathwing Knights were available in the regular Codex, I think most armies would just take a unit of 5, right? So I think it's just really nice to go that way. All my lists have been a lot of like, okay, I'll take 3 units of Terminators, I'll take a couple characters, and then I hit like 2,000 points. So it's very challenging, and I think going like very heavy into the Dark Angel preferred stuff and combos might take you a little bit too elite in that nature. Like, I've been trying to add in more Primaris to my lists, but so what's your current list right now, Jeremy? You want to share that so people can text beat you?
Yeah, sure.
Francois, write it down, Francois. So.
It's gonna keep evolving. So the current list is actually tweaked from something that John Lennon posted a while back when the rules were first leaked. So what it is as I was mentioning out, so it's Asriel, 2 Talon Masters for my HQs. It's a Vanguard, which is because I don't want to take any troops. I don't care for troops. I want to take all of the elites.
Good man.
And what I do is I take all of the elites. So I have Asriel, 2 Talon Masters. I have a Ravenwing Apothecary.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Blade Guard Ancient, who is carrying the Pennant of Remembrance for the 5+ Feel No Pain 12 Deathwing. I've also given him the Rights of War Warlord trait,
Okay.
which gives objectives secured to core units.
Yep. Which they are.
Which the 2 big blobs of Deathwing Terminators with 7 pairs of Lightning Claws and 3 Thunderhammer Storm Shields are core. And then after that, I've taken 2 Deathwing command squads with just 2-man Lightning Claws on them for 70 points each, because they're actually quite cheap. And then the bottom half of the list, which is where things have evolved the most, right now it has 4 attack bikes with multi-meltas and a grav pod.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice, because I think you sent me your list a few days ago. Why do you still take a grav pod?
Because Primaris is still everywhere. Grav pods delete Primaris units from existence without needing any real stratagem support. Grav went to a 30-inch range from 24 inches, so you can basically, what I usually do is I actually just use the pod to keep them off the table if I go second.
Mm-hmm.
If I go first, the pod drops right next to Asriel. They sit in his bubble with his rerolls. I pay 2 command points to treat them as if they're stationary, and they're hitting on 2s now.
Interesting. And the multi-melta attack bikes with the apothecary, obviously you can bring them back. They've been doing a lot of work for you.
They have been. One of my test games, the 4 attack bikes killed 2 defilers and before they were finally finished off by some las cannons. But the other thing is that they sit in Asriel's 4-up invulnerable bubble with an apothecary sitting next to them. So they have a 3-up armor save, a 4-up invulnerable save against shooting, and then a 6-up feel no pain. And then they're 4 wounds, T5. And if one dies, you then bring one back from the squad.
Yeah, that sounds like a no-brainer, actually. And they're a lot cheaper than the ATVs, right? As we were talking earlier.
Yeah, they're 55 points for a multi-melta attack bike.
Whew.
So
seems like a good deal.
The 4 of them are 220 points.
Yeah, and they're not easy to take off the board either, especially at range. Cool.
And then meanwhile, you've got 10 Terminators starting on the table, marching towards you, and another 10 waiting to deep strike with the Ravenwing.
It's not like you can ignore those either.
Yeah, so it's just like you have this death ball coming towards you. You have a whole bunch of high toughness shooting that you need to try to budge. And then you've got this hammer just kind of hanging over your head waiting to drop.
So what secondaries do you go for? Is there any interesting ones like While We Stand? Is that something that you can do with this army?
While We Stand, We Fight is perfect because it's Asriel and the 2 Talon Masters.
Yeah, and if those are dead, you're probably in trouble, right?
The game is going south if those are dead.
Yeah, so that's great. What are the other secondaries that this army really excels at?
So Raised Banners is, depending on the number of objectives, it does quite well with, because the command squad can just, since it's just sitting there with Lightning Claws bodyguarding, will usually be sitting on objectives and just raise the banner and move on. Sometimes I will look to my opponent to see if there's something I can take off of them, but the other one that I've often been taking is Engage. Now, I can't score that in the first turn, but on the second turn with my deep strikes and with some decent advance rolls, it's actually not too difficult to start scoring.
Well, those 2-man Terminator command squads are perfect for that, because you just hide those 2 guys that cost 70 points in a corner of the table, and the enemy can't divert resources to go hunt them down because he's got more pressing concerns.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're still, that's a lot of firepower to get rid of those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Because they're inner circle. They have a 2-up armor, 5-up invulnerable save, 3 wounds apiece. They take a fair bit of shooting to budge.
Yeah. Now, does Asriel can they protect? Yeah, they protect all characters, so so you can use them to
Dark
protect.
Angel's characters within 3 inches of them, they can't be shot at. So like what I will do, and I've done this to people, and they were quite salty about it for understandable reasons. Hide a Deathwing Terminator squad behind a piece of obscuring terrain, and then put 2 Talon Masters in that piece of obscuring terrain that can see out.
Yeah.
They're characters. They can't be targeted. They can't be shot at. The Terminators can't be hit by anything except for non-line of sight shooting. And then Talon Masters just have free reign over the table.
Do you think that command squad, like even a Mana Core, you're looking at like something like, let's say, eight shots. You're looking at 4 hits. We'll just say 4 wounds. You should be able to save minus
it'd be 2 wounds because permanent transhuman, remember?
Permanent transhuman, so it'll be 2 wounds. So yeah, you're not losing them to a Mana Core. You're not losing them to a basilisk.
And again, if they're shooting a Manticore at a 70-point command squad,
You're happy with that.
I'm loving it. I'm just like, yeah, go right ahead.
What else are they shooting though, right? Like in your army,
Yeah,
they can't hit the apothecary. They can't. I guess they would probably shoot your attack bikes, right?
Yeah. That's their best target because, well, you can't transhuman attack bikes. That's their one weakness.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that those command squads. Yeah. Now, you ever think about taking a second detachment to take more of the command squads, or because you could take a couple more and you could use one of them to maybe deploy scramblers or something like that?
So the most you can take is 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like I could see taking a third one, but at that point, why not just take something like company veterans with jump packs?
Now, one of the other
same thing with a 2-man.
Yes, you could. Yeah, and you could also just take regular command squads, right?
Yep.
Now, if you were to take, let's say, instead of the command squads, I guess if you were to go for, oh my god, I lost my train of thought. Never mind, I lost my train of thought.
That's a really, really strong list. Yeah, it actually plays, I think, similar to my Whitecars list, except I have plasma inceptors instead of graph pod, and I have the new plasma dudes that everybody's raging against, whose name now for some reason escapes me. Not plasma, Melta. What are they called? The Eradicators. There we go. I have Eradicators instead of attack bikes, but I have 15 Blade Guard instead of the Terminators, but I can see how it plays in a similar way.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. So when John Lennon originally posted the list that this was varied off of, it had 10 Eradicators in that shooting component instead of the drop pod and the multi-meltas. Which again, you're sitting in Asriel's aura. You can transhuman them for 1 command point because it was 2 5-mans.
I like that
sitting
a lot,
in Asriel's 4-up bubble. I ran it and I just felt dirty. And so I was just like, you know what? Let's make this a pure Old Marine list. So I was like, let's look at what's in the stuff that just got 2 wounds, stuff that got bumped. So I was looking at the attack bikes, looking at the Devastator squads, and I was like, you know what? The Grav Pod still really strong.
So I remembered my train of thought. So if you're taking Deathwing Knight, like if you were to fit Deathwing Knights, let's say, into that list, you'd have to replace one of your Terminator units with it, and then it's probably an extra 170 points. You don't think that'd be worth it to maybe combat squad them, or?
So the changes that would be necessary to do that would be to drop an attack bike, drop a command squad, and drop a Terminator squad. And then I would replace all of that with 2 5-man Deathwing Knight squads. I've been debating experimenting with it, but it is a lot to give up, but it does give you a lot more durability on the table.
A little bit more of a
my
combat
current
punch,
Deathwing
too.
Terminator squads only have, and my current Terminator squads only have 3 Storm Shields in each one, whereas now I'm dropping 3 and bringing 10 more in. So it's a lot more durability on the table.
And they're better than the Thunderhammers.
And they are much better than the
Thunderhammers. much better.
Now realizes.
Yeah.
No, those Deathwing Knights
are
crazy. Like they're crazy. Like you could just, let's say you played a regular Marine list, and you just said, "Oh, I'm just going to count them as Dark Angels," and you just threw in that unit, you would be totally satisfied. Okay, well, I think we've covered anything. Is there any last thoughts on the Dark Angels?
They're super cool. I love them.
Yeah, because the other thing is that like people often ask me why I play Dark Angels. Like, well, 1, it was the first army that I played, but 2, I just like their aesthetic. Like they have a bit of an identity complex when it comes to which wing you want to run, because you have the Ravenwing, the Deathwing, and then the Green Wing, which all have their own unique ways of being played, but they just look really cool. Like Deathwing Knight Terminators look really nice. They've got these nice flowing robes. They've got these fancy maces. They've got these stylized storm shields. They have a really fun army look.
And their lore is super fun. Like I really have something. I really love the perpetual atonement thing that they have, where they have this original sin of the Legion that they've been trying to atone for, but can never atone for because they're never going to find every fallen, right? I don't know if it's because I went to a Jesuit school and Catholics have a thing for guilt, but it really resonates with me.
Oh, you should be paying Sisters of Battle with that one. But yeah, so I guess the last comment we got is that Jeremy says he enjoys the show, but talking about a weaker by Space Marine standard unit is like listening to people talk about one of the poorest billionaires.
Yeah,
It's kind of true. I don't think this.
It is very true.
It is very true, but I think Marines did come down in power with the last book, and I think this Dark Angel list, although it's just as powerful as some of the rest, it's different enough that it'll look different, it'll play different, it'll be very nice. I wouldn't say like some people have kind of lost their minds about Dark Angels, thinking that they're crazy and transhuman everywhere. And I've heard Custody players, Darren, Custodies need to get this, blah blah blah, and it'd be nice if they did, but I think that's about it. So I guess if that's it, thanks for joining us, Jeremy. It was really great to have you on, and thanks, Francois, as usual.
Cheers.
And have a good night, guys.
Pleasure.